Welcome to the PhD Journey Unplugged podcast. I am Dr. Marilyn Ward, and this is my colleague, Dr. Sarah Gordon. We are the co-founders of this podcast and recent graduates of Concordia University's Chicago's doctoral program in leadership in health and human performance. We decided to take our experiences, knowledge, and academic training from our doctoral journey and start this podcast, sharing our voices on topics related to wellness, healthy aging, and purposeful living. Dr. Gordon brings to our discussions a background in psychology and research focused on exercise motivation with older adult athletes. She is a freelance writer for Outside Interactive, writing for Triathlete magazine, as well as a published poet, photographer, and multi-sport enthusiast. Dr. Ward is the founder and owner of No Excuses LLC, a leading health and wellness coaching company. With over 25 years of combined experience in wellness, leadership, and motivational coaching, including 6 years of dedicated service in the United States Air Force. She brings her expertise and discipline to her mission. Dr. Ward's research focuses on enhancing the quality of life and increasing longevity in aging adults. We are both passionate advocates for helping others thrive towards better health and value connecting deeply with our audiences. We strive to empower individuals to take a charge of their health, making lasting changes and transform their lives from the inside out. Thank you for taking the time to listen to us. All information and opinions expressed in this podcast are for the general purposes only and should not be taken as professional advice. Hello, and welcome back to the PhD Journey Unplugged podcast. I am Dr. Marilyn Ward, and this is my colleague, Dr. Sarah Gordon. Dr. Gordon, what are we going to share with our audience today?
Great. Thank you for introducing me. And yep, we're at episode 10.
Woo-woo!
How did we get here?
Yeah.
This is huge. This is a big step for us. But
Yes.
10 episodes in, and every week we try to build on kind of previous weeks. And when we think about the discussions that we want to have. And so today we were thinking about how to talk about change.
Yeah.
And we all know that change is inevitable. But I said to Marilyn, I feel like if we call this change is inevitable, it sounds a little bit like negative, like, oh, we got to go through change.
Right.
And he said, what do you think of change is enlightening?
Yes.
And so with that,
Brighter.
right.
So much
So
brighter.
with that frame of reference and that way of thinking about it, then it becomes more exciting and you're more curious about it. So we're going to talk about change. We all know change. We all go through changes, and we'll talk about all the different ways we go through changes. We will talk about some strategies on how to handle change. It is scary we've all been there,
Yeah.
but we're trying to say in this podcast today, let's just look at it in a more positive, more exciting,
Right.
more curious way to approach it. So
Absolutely. I think we should look at it instead of, because I think we say that change can be uncomfortable, but we're going to try to help you become comfortable with the uncomfortable.
yes,
Right? So
yes,
make it a positive.
yes. And you might notice Marilyn has a beautiful microphone.
Yay! I got a microphone and I got a light.
So we are
I got a new
growing.
camera.
Yes,
So we are growing. Yay.
Yeah.
Yes.
And what I learned this week is I ordered the same microphone, but I have an old laptop, so I need to get a new laptop. So we are going to evolve every week. You'll see these changes as we grow into this platform. We absolutely love having this opportunity to talk, through the PhD Journey Unplugged. And anyhow, excited to settle into this conversation today. I like this kind of quote about, and I had mentioned this to you briefly before we started today, about the enlightenment through the disruption.
Yeah,
and it's hard to remember that when your life starts to kind of get,
yeah,
pushed around and changes, maybe outside your control. if you can just focus on that something better is coming from it, I think that is
Right.
where you find that growth mindset.
Right. I totally agree with you. I think it's right where if we accept the change as a good and know and to grow from it, right? We're always trying to learn from our mistakes, learn where we can grow, see change as something that's beneficial because
Hmm.
most time, change change occurs in everything, right? If we think about a piece of coal has to go through this uncomfortable change to become a beautiful diamond. And Sarah, you're big on sparkle. Like that's our kind of our kick right now is this whole thing with sparkle. And I think if we look at it like that when we're done, right, we'll be a beautiful sparkled specimen.
Actually, if you think, yeah, sparkles actually look like diamonds.
Yes.
And it's so interesting because I've gone through a lot of changes. When you get your doctorate, I mean, 5 years is a long time, and a
Yeah.
lot changes in 5 years. For me personally, I moved, I lost loved ones. I mean, a
Mm.
lot changes in that time.
Oh,
And I don't know, I'm just starting to notice the sparkle. And I think
yeah.
it's like change in such a positive way. It's light.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what it's all about, but I'm following it, and I feel like it's very enlightening. So, yeah. But I think that sometimes if we allow ourselves to open up to change,
Yes.
we get some clarity in it.
Yes. And that's where we should meet it. We should stop trying to like headbutt it and stop it and learn to embrace it. And that comes with, changing our mindset. It starts
Hmm.
with, how we view things. Are you viewing the glass half empty or are you viewing the glass, half full? So I
Hmm.
think if we open our minds a little bit, settle in and see what this change is about, then I think we can really learn to love it or learn, and accept it.
But why is it so scary for us? I mean, I'm not going to sit here and pretend to our listeners like change is hard for me.
Yeah.
I don't do very well with it. I like things
Yes.
consistent, but it's a natural part of life. Our
Yes.
bodies go through it physiologically, which we'll talk about. We go through it psychologically, emotionally, with changing relationships and loss and, happy things, your family changes.
Mhm.
Um, and then there are things outside of our control, which we'll talk a little bit about in terms of the environment. That, things are just
Right.
constantly changing. Like I'd like to, if we have time today, talk about like AI and how that's changing, right?
Right. Yeah.
And we have one of our books was Thomas Kuhn's, and it's not philosophy of scientific knowledge, but it's his book. I can't remember at the exact moment, but it
I'm
tells
having a
us
look.
that scientists and researchers who don't change, they get left behind. Their way of
Yes.
thinking gets left behind. So we have to change. But why? I'm curious what you think. Why is it so hard for us?
I think I think again it comes with the fear of the unknown, and the fear of what that outcome is going to be. We're always we're afraid to take on that change because we don't know what's on the other side. Now, if it's happening to you and you have no process, like you don't have a part in it, that's another way of handling it. But if like we decided consciously to do this, to go and get our PhD, we
Okay.
knew, but it was scary, right, to go through
It
that, but
was.
it was an effort we made. So we're like, okay, so I will embrace that change because I'm causing it. I'm the one that's going to make that change. Doesn't mean
It's
we weren't
it's
fearful.
voluntary. It's
Right.
We are putting ourselves towards voluntary change.
Yes.
We're in
So
more
we
control of
put
it.
ourselves, doesn't mean that fear doesn't set in there, but I think fear is more unsettling. Let's say you did get fired from a job and
Mhm.
and now you are forced to go try something new or your job shut down. Let's look at it like that. Let's not
Right.
look at it, we got fired. Let's say
You're
our job something shut down and everybody's being shifted to another, maybe it's a new location, maybe it's a new position. That is an unknown. We don't know.
involuntary.
Yeah.
I
So
want
I,
almost not to interrupt you real quick, but as
no.
you're sharing this, I almost wonder, is that more scary?
Oh, I think so.
Because you have no control over it.
Because you have no control and you don't have time to prepare. You don't have time to
Right.
prepare your mind, your emotions. it's an upheaval. Think about a storm. When a storm rolls in, I'm so sad, like feel so sad and all for in Texas, the flooding.
Right. Oh my
They
gosh,
had no
yes.
idea. They had
Right.
no idea it was coming. And so you want to talk about the change in seconds in
Right.
a storm and scrambling to try to figure out what to do. That's it's not, you have no control of that
You're thrust into change.
and to change. And some people are those natural born leaders who jumped in and tried to help. And you had others who were so debilitated by the fear, they just like
Mhm.
sit there. And I'm not saying I wasn't there. I don't really know what happened, but you see it in the news, right?
No, but we're a living human organism, and
Right,
we can control things and make conscious decisions to make changes in our lives.
right.
And then we're just thrust curveballs sometimes that, thrust
Yeah.
us into change that is just beyond our control. And it's kind of like, and when we get to strategies, it's, what do you do with all that? How do our podcast, we talk about every week, is always about health, wellness, growth mindset, quality of life, all these things that we can go through life and enjoy life more.
Right.
So, last week we talked about time, right? Giving yourself the gift of time. But change is one of these tricky things. It's, I almost think it almost depends on how, like, we're so individualized in it. I don't even think we
Yeah.
can have a generalized conversation about it. I think it's a very individualized response to it. And I think the
Mhm.
the best we can do to offer to our listeners is like the strategies that you would
Yeah.
and we'll spend a lot of time on strategies today, like the strategies you can put in place for yourself because we are so different in how we
Oh,
respond to change. We all
yes.
have different life experiences and stuff.
Right. And in the research, it even says in the research that it's kind of a phenomenon,
Hmm.
and the way that scientists were trying to figure out how to capture it in studies
Hmm.
were the strategies, using the trans theoretical model of now it used to be the 5 stages of change. Now it's the 6 stages of change. But and we'll talk about that more later. But so they have to use that. They built that model because it was so hard to put it into one box.
It's so it's very dynamic. There's
Yes.
so many things that come into it. And so I think that's like when we talk about it and how to help people deal with change is it's the first thing I would say is just highly individualized. And so if you're looking to work with somebody, you want to make sure that somebody understands that it's not, we don't have like just a, blanket response to change. Some people
Right.
have different ways of handling it for different reasons in their lives.
And
So
situational. Let's
it's
put that in there too.
situational.
Situational.
Yes. So we know it's a highly individualized response. But what we're trying to say today is how do you take the fear of the unknown? And
Mhm.
this is not going to be easy. I'm not
Yeah.
telling you for myself too.
I think it's
But
one
how
of
do
the
you
toughest
take,
things.
yeah, and how do you take the fear of unknown and turn it into curiosity and
Yeah.
excitement? Now, obviously, when you mention Texas, that's not relevant here. That's
Yeah.
tragedy and grieving, and it's like I said, change is multi-dimensional,
Yeah.
dynamic, and I'm not trying to make that sound like that's be happy about that because that's a very
Right.
sad, tragic thing to
Very
happen,
right.
and grief, all the stages of grief will come into that
Hmm.
um, process of change.
Right.
But, you know, if we focus more like, I guess, within like a growth mindset and
Behavioral.
behavioral and trying to live your life, to the fullest that you possibly can, then we can talk a little bit more about like how do you change fear into curiosity.
Right.
Do you want to go through that theoretical framework? Because I think that's really important in
Oh,
explaining
sure.
how
I
you
mean,
can move people through these stages.
so this is one thing that I have used for years in my coaching, and I was very close to using it in my study, but I did not. I used the health belief model instead. But so the 6 changes, and the last one, the relapse, is what has been added as the 6th one. So you have pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, maintenance, and then the last one is relapse. So think of this from a health and wellness standpoint. If you're just sitting there contemplating, like no intention of changing your behavior, but maybe a mere thought,
Okay.
that's your pre-contemplation. A lot of people, in each stage, and this is why I didn't use it in my study, there's no determination for each stage. So there's no way I could have tracked, I had 34 participants in my study, 34 different people, all on a different level of change. It would have been a longitudinal study by the time I was done. So that's why we were like, no. So then you have contemplation. You're thinking about it. You're aware that you want to make a change, but you haven't really done anything other than thought about it now more than once a week. You're like,
Okay.
oh, okay, it's coming, it's coming. Then preparation. You have actually maybe called the gym or called a trainer and said, hey, I'm interested. Could you give me some prices? So you're preparing for the idea. Maybe you went out and you bought some new running gear or running shoes, whatever. So you're contemplating it. The action stage is your longest, well, part of one of your longest stages, because that's when you're actually doing it. So let's say you just had a goal of 10 pounds. So you're actually in there, the daily grind, you're with your trainer and you're on track tracking it. Now you come to, you've lost that weight, you've hit your goal. Now what do? Well, that's the maintenance stage. That is the longest. Most people stay between action and maintenance. And I always told my clients, I'm like, don't celebrate too long. Don't stay in that celebratory period too long, in that maintenance phase, because then you
Relapse.
might relapse, which is where
Right.
you come to that 6th one. So you really kind of always want to stay in action where you're maintaining.
But let me ask you this. Doesn't there have to be a catalyst, something from pre-contemplation to contemplation to like action? I feel like un unfortunately, a lot of times people make changes because something, and we're going to talk about physiology, but
Mm.
something clinical emerges. They get some type of sickness. They find out
Oh,
they have cardiovascular disease or
yep.
diabetes or some type of chronic illness because our doctorates are in health and human performance, so we always like to
Mhm.
frame our conversations about how do we achieve the best health that we can in our
Yep.
lives. And sadly, sometimes it becomes a clinical problem. You
Right.
find out you're sick.
Yeah.
And then you jump into action. You go, you just talked about the theoretical framework. Then you go
Mm.
into the action and the maintenance because you realize and you stay in maintenance because you realize if you relapse, you're going to go right back to that
Right.
unhealthy, stage that you're in. So
Yeah.
I think you know, that's why this conversation is so important because we don't want our
Yeah.
listeners,
We don't want you to relapse.
we don't want you to relapse and we don't want you to get to the point where it's clinical. So,
Right.
listen, our bodies are changing every single day, every hour of the day, physiologically.
Right.
A lot of us don't go through life thinking, "Oh, I wonder what's going on inside my body at the cellular
No,
level."
not until something happens.
Science is like hems. But when you exercise and when you do aerobic conditioning and strength training and anaerobic conditioning, oxygen and all these great things are happening from the physical activity that are enhancing the structure of your cells and the
Yeah.
physiological structure and adaptation of your body in a healthy way.
Yeah.
So I just think it's important as we talk about behavior change to
Yes.
to say, okay, you know, what just be a little mindful about, okay, what's going on inside our bodies.
Yeah, because I think back in the day, and I just had this conversation, actually, I was got to do a podcast with Concordia University, and we were talking about health and outreach. And it used to be they talked about chronic disease, like we were fixing the problem when it got there. You know,
Right.
us as exercise science professionals, we talked about it when they came. They came to us when they already had a problem.
Right.
Well,
Not preventative.
instead of now, we're all about prevention,
Prevention.
preventative maintenance. And I'm like, why? But that's why I say we should start talking about these topics when children are young. So it's always in the back of their mind, like, I need to stay active and I need to stay healthy and I need to stay fit. Well, why? Because I don't want to have an aging body when I get older. But we don't talk about it until it's too late. So I think you
Right.
either have a desire, like if you're just one of those people who's always healthy, it's when you were asking like what's that trigger, what's that mechanism, I think
Right.
it's having a desire and
Desire to change.
change, or a desire to be something better.
Hmm.
Otherwise it's the other, it's the you're faced with some sort of
Have
new
to change.
and you have to change.
I have a book called, it's a great book. It's the title is a little alarming, but it's not, it's a good book. It's called Change or Die.
Yes, that's a great I love it. Because I
But
always say, like, we're not dead yet. That's like my
right.
biggest thing. Nobody steal that because that is going to be a topic of a book one day. We are not dead yet. So,
But actually I have another book. I think it's actually called that Not Dead Yet. Actually, Dr. Don Ardell wrote that book.
no,
It's
so
a
you can't already
great
have
book.
that. Oh, I'm so bummed.
He's a
I'm so
great
bummed.
person. He's a lifelong athlete. Was a competitive runner, triathlete, and he puts out a wellness newsletter like weekly, and he
Oh, that's
developed something
awesome.
called Real. It's called Real Philosophy and everything. It's like reason, exuberance, athleticism, and oh gosh, I can't remember the L. But anyhow,
I
if
love
you look
it.
him up, his name's Dr. Don Ardell. He's been a great mentor of mine, and he did write a book called Not Dead Yet.
Man.
But you know, somebody like himself, they understand the physiological benefits of exercising. We know,
Yes.
listen, how many times have you gone into the gym and felt like, had a
Yeah.
great workout and walked out with a little extra step, in your
Always. You
because it's the
leave feeling,
oxygen, it's the physiological changes that
yeah,
exercise
the
does for us, our
dopamine, the
bodies.
serotonin,
Yes.
all those good endorphins. And it's funny because it is sometimes hard to get out of the bed at 5 o'clock in the morning,
Yeah.
6 o'clock, or whatever it is that you're getting up. You're like, oh, I got to go to the gym again. But I also say if you find something that you love at the gym or you find a class, it doesn't always have to be the same every day. Find a Zumba class or I see this new dance class, hip hop dance class a lot. Find something that you enjoy doing so it doesn't feel like a workout. But let's just say you do feel, "Ugh, you don't want to go." I promise afterwards, the feeling that you have, the exuberance, that you get from it totally
Worth
outweighs.
it. It's worth it. And I
Yes.
bet you if we looked at the research of people who do get to this point where they change or die, like they have to
Yeah.
change, they have some type of chronic illness that they're facing. I bet you when they start to add these new habits into their lives, you feel so good. I mean, that for me,
Yes.
physical activity, the reason it's been a part of my life my entire life, it just
Yeah.
feels good. Stretching feels good.
Yeah.
So if you can stick with it,
Yes.
um,
And right when you just said that, when you said make it habit forming. So I was reading an article and it talked about habit formation.
mhm,
And I always say 30 days because it's easy to remember, but it was like it can take anywhere from 18 to 254 days for a new behavior to become a habit.
it's
So, hey, don't think it has to happen in a week. It could take time for this change to become a habit, but stick with it.
yeah, and don't beat yourself up either if you have a setback. Just get back on track and
Just get
keep
back on
going.
track.
But why is it so hard for us? Let's get back. Like, I'm just
Yeah.
curious. Like, why do you think as human beings, like, help me, Marilyn? I want to know.
I I think, it also comes from motivation. Are you a self-motivated person or do you need a coach? But look at how many, if we all could do it, right? If we all
Right.
could embrace change as enlightening as it is, it would be easy, but there would be no therapists, mental health therapists. There would be
Right.
no personal
Right.
trainers.
Put a
There
lot
would
of people
be,
out of business.
yes, right? So we know it's not easy. We know that
Yeah.
it's not just something that you can grasp like picking up, taking a drink. It's work. You
Yeah.
have
And
to work on yourself and you have to believe that you are worth the work, worth
yeah.
going through the change, worth, fighting for.
Mm-hmm. I
But
agree. But I think what you're touching on, so we know that there's physiological changes. We know as we age, the muscular system changes, our I mean, everything changes
yes,
as we get older. We know from research that exercise, physical activity really helps us navigate those changes in a more healthy way. Okay.
yes,
It's the same for psychological or emotional type changes too.
for sure.
We have things that happen in our lives that are outside of our control, loss, good things, sad things. We have decisions that we make in our lives that change our lives. But
Yep.
again, I think even with psychological and emotional growth, physical activity is a wonderful way to navigate that change.
Yes,
The
because it
clarity.
offers so many different
Yes.
benefits.
Yes.
So many different benefits. The like you had already mentioned, but the oxygen to the brain, the when
Right.
you get activity, you're bringing oxygen to the brain. Well, what does that do? Well, then that's feeding your brain and it's giving it that mental clarity. It's helping with your cognition. Well, helping with your cognition, that's helping with your mental health. So that's the good cycle we need to
Yeah.
be on.
And regulating all the neurotransmitters that are going on in the brain, like you mentioned,
Yes.
serotonin, dopamine,
Yes, it's firing all of
norepinephrine.
those. And during that process, that's where it's helping you do everything else, right? It helps you stay motivated. It helps you
Mhm.
stay in a good mood.
Yes.
It helps you want to go back. And I think this is the great thing about seeing a goal. That's why we always talk about writing down your goals and the baby steps
Mhm.
and celebrate the small rewards because it's celebrating those small rewards are what brings you back to doing it again and again,
Yeah.
keeps you in that habit forming.
I think we talked about in one of the episodes, and I think I remember I said something like, New Year's Eve resolutions, like I
Yeah.
am going to, whatever, this
Right.
big goal.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's how lasting change happens. I mean, maybe you do have like this epiphany or aha moment, and you really do change your life drastically, black or white, done. But I think, like you're mentioning, for most of us, they're small steps, small things that we do to change things in our lives. Unless it's more of like a life or death situation, then you have to change quickly. But
Well, let's look at it
I
from a
think
PhD standpoint, right?
say
We
that one
take
more time.
to look at it from the PhD journey standpoint, one class at a time.
Yes.
You didn't just go in and write your whole dissertation. It was one step. First, we had to learn the basics of getting our, leadership material in. And then we went into first, well, let's understand your philosophy. Okay, well, now I want to make sure you have good ethics. And then all building
You're
us
right.
up to the big day. So again, those are changes. And for some, right, wasn't easy taking constructive criticism, wasn't
No.
easy having somebody, you know, say to you, good luck on your journey, whatever, what your professor said to you, but you went through the change, you embraced the change.
Well, let me ask you a question, okay? And I'm happy to answer it as well. How do you think you changed through that journey? So, people who are listening, if you're going through your doctorate program right now, or whatever you're going through in your life, like I'm just curious, like from our own perspectives, like how do you think you changed? When
I
you
think
started to like now.
that, well, it's a great question that
Not to
you
put you on the
asked.
spot, but
No,
let's just
it's funny
see.
because the
I'll try to
admission
answer it too.
yeah, the admissions officer kind of asked the same thing, like, what did what was your greatest moment or what did you learn? And I was like, I think I learned one to be a collaborative thinker because I think we all kind of shared ideas. I definitely learned to take criticism better or constructive criticism. Like, don't
Mhm.
just tell me, well, that's wrong. Tell me why. I think, and I learned to be a more empathetic listener and thinker. So, and just to know, like I worked with seniors, like my study was with seniors. And instead of me going in and saying, this is what you need to do, I said, you know what? Tell me, what is it that you're doing that you enjoy right now? What is it that that is already working for you? And now I'm going to share with you on a professional exercise standpoint, and let's
Mhm.
come together and talk about, this exercise that we're going to be doing. So I became that's why I say a collaborative thinker. I was able to listen
Yeah.
to them and then also have empathy because I know that we have almost a 40-year age gap with some of my participants, or the least amount was 20. 20, my youngest was, I think, 62. My oldest was 94, 98. Awesome.
Mhm.
So, all right. How about you?
I know. Well, how did I change over 5 years? I mean, I definitely learned that I have more resilience within me than I thought I did when I started.
Oh,
And I think that's part of like change. Like, it can be scary, but I think you realize kind of what you're made of when you have to push through kind of challenging things and
yes.
you have to dig deep. And then you realize, because maybe your first thought, maybe my first thought would be, I am not, how am I ever going to get through this?
I'm going to steal yours too. I like resilience. That's a good one.
Right? And then you get
Yeah.
through it and you're like, wow, I didn't even think I had that in me. And I think even from a training perspective, like, we both like to swim, bike, and run. And sometimes you're out there
Yeah.
and you just think to yourself, like, it's hot, it's
Well, I was
humid.
just thinking of the Iron Man. I was like,
How can you?
nobody gets out there. It was, your first race is your first race. Now I've done an Olympic, which kind of prepares you, but I didn't, nobody knew their first time doing a half Ironman, what it was going to entail, really. I mean, we get the gist. And
Yeah,
I
I
was
can.
like, oh, here we go. Guess we're going to,
Well, I
but
think you learn to just, I know it's a little cliche, we use it a lot now, like to dig deep, but you really, it, I don't know how to describe it. It's just you realize what you're made of. And
yes,
and then when you get through that, it's definitely a confidence booster and it's definitely you can look back on it and smile about it like, wow, I did get through it. I guess it's like the climbing
yeah,
the mountain theme that I said in my commencement
yeah,
speech about, when we go through these changes, hard stuff, obstacles, good stuff, however your life is changing, when you're going through that process and you look back, you realize, how much you actually have changed. And,
yes.
you know,
And that's what I want to ask you.
within a
What,
growth mindset, let me just say one quick thing. I
yeah.
remember taking my son and his girlfriend. They were leaving high school and going on to college, and it's a scary transition. So I literally brought them back to their elementary school and I said, would you still want to be here in your elementary
Oh,
school? And
I
then they
love that.
realized like how much they had outgrown that environment and that situation. So,
Yeah.
trust the process, trust
Ooh,
the
trust the
change
process.
is enlightening, and there's a ton of growth available to you through change.
And everything. And with that growth. So think of growth when I ask this question.
Okay.
Do you think the resilience now sets you up for maybe not the same similar situation, maybe a little bit situation? Do you think that it sets you up to already have a mindset to be able
That's
to
a good
tackle it better?
question. So that's a good question. So I think if we approach life with a growth mindset, there are always going to be things that are going to present themselves as new challenges, and maybe a little scary because
Yeah.
that's growth,
Right.
right? Like we've talked about wanting to do a TED Talk, okay?
Yes, that scares the life
Right?
out of me. Yeah.
That might feel a little scary because we've never done it and it's a bigger platform, and or
Right.
motivational speaking on a broader with a broader audience and broader platform. So yes and no. I think yes, I kind of know what I'm made of, but no, because I don't know. And that's the whole thing about change. I
Yeah.
don't know what that next
Unknown.
unknown is. And I hope that I handle it like I did my PhD journey, but
Yeah. Well,
and
you're right.
we
It's
take our
situational.
I always say we need to take I need to take my own advice.
Yes. Well, I
I don't
think if
know.
you
I
think about
mean,
like racing, if you think about racing, right? If
well,
we are out and you're training, let's say you're training for your first 5K,
okay.
you practice, right? You practice,
Right.
and practice makes perfect. And now that
Yes.
you've done a 5K, several, let's just say you've done several under your belt. Because I'm building a thing like you have, or in the back, all your medals, mine are shoved in a bowl. And my son asked me today, because I was going to have him make it. And I said, he goes, well, how many do you have? And I said, gosh, I don't even know. So I started counting the bibs and I got past 20 and I was like, okay, I'm going to need a bigger one than this. So, but think about it. I started with my first 5K and I was scared to death of doing it. And then that went to the 5K, then I did a 10K, and then it was the 13 miles, and then a full marathon. Then I was like, let's take it to the next level. And then it's the tri. And the tries have all their own sets of goals. But if we look at it, I feel like that fear or overcoming that fear has
Mhm.
set us up to for success for the next adventure or for the next goal.
I agree with you. And it's so funny that you're bringing up like racing for this conversation. Because when I think about like, I did my first marathon, I was in my 20s. I did the Marine Corps Marathon
Oh, wow. I
and
haven't done
training.
that one.
Yeah, it's a great race. I did it
I've
twice. And
heard.
it's a great race. And, when you're training for something like that, there is a lot of fear, like, can I do it? And I had some interesting training lessons along the way of getting dehydrated and having to go to the hospital and getting
Oh,
electrolytes through an IV. But
gosh.
lessons
All right,
learned.
lessons learned.
Looking back, I know now. But it's so interesting because, and I'm not telling all our listeners you should do a marathon, although it is fun. It's a great
It's
goal, and if you enjoy running,
a
and
beautiful
you
journey.
can handle it. It's a great journey because I've used that visualization, and we're going to have a episode about the power of visualization.
Oh, I love
I
that topic.
use that visualization from that marathon all the time in my life since then. So
Yeah.
many times, even in our doctoral journey, I would even say to friends, like,
Yeah.
we're at mile 15, or we're like at
Yeah. Oh,
mile
that's a great
23,
analogy.
right? Or don't forget to get some water and, at an aid station, like,
Right.
and then just the thrill of crossing that finish line. There's just
Yes.
nothing like it. And so,
Very emotional. I cried through many of my
yeah,
races, like just the
yes.
emotional running through
So,
the Disney castle. I was like, oh my
yeah.
gosh, this is so magical.
But I know we're a little bit all over the place, but I do think racing, because we are, strong proponents of physical activity, and Marilyn and I happen to both love to be a little competitive with it.
Well, it's a good
I
way
think
to
it gives us a
describe
lot of,
change in a visual
yes,
aspect. Like,
yes.
yeah.
And actually, I'm going to mention this because I have this down, I think as a strategy, but I think it's important to mention it now. When things happen outside of your control, they're involuntary, they happen in the environment. There's lots of examples. We don't need to give all the examples here. But sometimes when you can't control the change, and I remember my dad even used to tell me this,
Mm.
you can control, there's certain things you still can control in your life, like exercising,
Oh,
like the discipline to get to the gym, like what
right,
you're eating, your personal habits. You can control those. So
right.
even if the world feels like it's chaos around you, you can still control getting out for that run. You can still
Yeah.
control putting good food in your mouth. You can still, there's things in your life you can still control. And that's
You
where you
control
can
how you
find,
handle it, right?
yes,
How
and
you
that's where you can
handle it.
find some peace in kind of the chaos of change. And I always thought that was excellent advice.
Great advice.
Right? So
Kudos to
that's,
Dad.
I think we're saying that today, like for us, physical activity has always been kind of one way to handle change and stress and
Right.
everything else.
Well, yeah, and like we're saying, like take it from an enlightening,
Yeah.
standpoint, because with change, a lot of people when they face change, they quit. I've had so many clients, they didn't see change fast enough and they quit. I said, if you quit now, I said,
Yeah.
you're only going to go back to where you were. That's not going to
Right.
propel you forward. So if you quit, and I love to see like in a race, I've seen people get tapped out in the Ironman. Like they didn't make it out of the swim, so they got tapped out. And I know I keep going back to racing, but I always wonder, those are the people I'd like to interview and do research, is if they, let's say they got tapped out, are you going to do it again? Are you going to do it again? So I have a great friend, she's a great runner friend. She did, she's was getting ready, or she's been preparing for an ultra. She's done 60. I think 2 times she's done a 60 mile. She did not make it through the 100. And I was like, all right, we love you. We're going to, whatever you need, get back out there training. She's already registered for another one.
Yeah, I mean
So
that I
you
love
can
that.
either quit and
Right.
be like,
Well, nobody ever said these things are going to be easy. But
right,
if you
right,
stick with it, whatever it is, wherever you are in your life and whatever you're facing in this conversation of change, because it's different. We have no
right,
idea what you're going through, but we're saying, and there's good changes. Your children get
yeah,
married, you become grandparents. I mean,
right,
it isn't all, it's like we said in the beginning, it's a very dynamic conversation.
yeah,
But if you're doing something like a weight loss goal or you're on a journey to get healthier, it does take some work. It
yeah,
doesn't always necessarily come that easy. Last week we talked about the gift of time and planning and, going to the grocery store and getting the ingredients that you need.
yeah,
So setting yourself up for success, for change, if it's something that you are voluntary, you want to change yourself, is
yeah.
probably important to think about.
Yeah,
Um,
because time is going to be a part of that. Time is going to be, it takes time to change. So
yeah.
what are you doing with that time? Are you making progress with that time? You doing something purposeful with that time? So I think that's definitely how those two are going to tie in.
Yeah, and the other thing it's important to mention is like we might not always be cognizant that change is like it's not necessarily has to be like a daily thing.
Right.
That could be
Hey,
exhausting.
I'm here. Yeah.
But I do
Yeah.
think we go through these growth periods in our lives, and I think if you are trying to actively grow, um, you have to be a little bit more mindful of it. I wanted to mention, we talked a little bit about how change can happen kind of outside. Like we know it happens physiologically within our bodies. We know there's
Mhm.
like a psychological, emotional part to growth, um, with change. But then there's things like you mentioned that happened in Texas, and then COVID. I think about COVID, and I
Oh,
like to call them like mass disruptors. It absolutely changed how we do everything. I mean, nobody was even on Zoom, really.
right.
Very, very few
Right.
people. Now everybody uses Zoom and so many other platforms. So
Right.
there's these like mass disruptors too that we have to adapt to, with change. And I think that you just have to be adaptable. We always say the key to success
Always.
is being
Yeah.
adaptable. But what do you think about that in terms of these, things that happen within more on like a macro level, within culture, society?
Oh, I think so. I just
Have to
remember
adapt.
going through change when I was still serving in the Air Force when 9/11 happened. I remember I was
Oh
working nights.
yeah. Can you
So
talk about that a little bit? That must
yeah,
have
well,
been interesting.
it was so weird, so bizarre. So I had only been home a few hours sleeping because I had worked the night shift. My husband at the time was on days, and he calls me and wakes me up and he's like, "Hey, turn on the TV." And so I turn on the TV and I'm like, what am I looking at? And I had seen that one plane had already went through. And I was like, okay. I said, well, that's odd. And while I was watching the second one, and I said, what is going on right now? No sooner did I get off the phone with him, I got called by our commander. Well, not the commander. The commander had sent out the delegation list and we all got called back into work. So, a few hours sleep, I'm back into work and talk about change. It changed our
Yeah.
security. It changed the way uh, the whole base ran. Like everything was different after that. And it still is like there's still a very high security ever since then. I served over in Saudi Arabia for Operation Southern Watch after I was there on the anniversary of 9/11,
Cool.
which was scary. But everything changed. The only good thing I will say that came out of that was the camaraderie of the United States. All of a sudden, we all came together as one,
Mm-hmm.
and we were going, like we're going to get the terrorists. That
Yeah.
that was probably the one good thing. But that was the most probably the scariest change that I had. I mean, to me, even COVID after that, I was like, hey, this ain't nothing. You guys deal with,
Well, that's interesting.
terrorist
Well,
attack.
that's interesting that you had that, and I think that's very telling while we have this conversation because after 9/11,
Right. Oh yeah. See,
COVID
we
was
need the
like a piece of
resilience.
cake.
Yes, I was like, hey, great, we've got
So,
COVID. We can figure this
so
out.
that's interesting because your lived experiences in some way prepared you to then be able to adapt to COVID.
Yes,
I
it
think
was
that's
different.
very
I won't
interesting.
say I won't say that COVID was not challenging in its own, and I worked
No,
at
I
a
mean,
senior home, but it definitely
yeah.
made me be a little more resilient, a little more I was a little more prepared for the
Mhm.
scary, whatever was going on. I was like, yeah, that is,
And that gets back to the dynamics of change because depending on what type of position or career you were in, if
mm,
you were a an ER physician or a surgeon
yeah,
working in a hospital, I mean that was really hard change. I mean, some of the
mm,
research, this is getting us a little off topic, but just real quickly, I remember looking at some of the research and just the burnout and just the people
yeah,
leaving professions because they really couldn't adapt to that change.
yeah.
It was too much, too fast, too overwhelming, and
It was a
there's
lot. We have
a
a
lot
friend
to
who was a
learn.
nurse. Yeah, she
There's
was
a
a
lot to
nurse
learn from
during
that.
that.
Yeah, a lot to learn.
She had a lot of burnout. Yep.
But I would bring it back if we were to have a whiteboard here and chart this out. I would bring it
Yeah,
back to physical activity, taking care of your health,
yes.
slowing down, making sure you're exercising, making sure you're nourishing your body to weather these changes that are outside of our control.
Which
Uh,
was fun when I worked. So I was working at the senior home at the time, and that was the first time we did videoing. So I taught the exercise classes. So
I remember
we,
that
so
people were
we
doing
did,
video. Yeah.
I did videos and
Mhm.
sent so they could still work out in their apartments. So they
Yeah,
got
I
to
mean,
see me and I got to
we
talk to
adapted.
them.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
I don't know. It was fun. So again, being adaptable and change and even after COVID was done, they still wanted the videos on TV. I was like, no, we're gonna meet in person now. But it was
But
fun.
but it's so fascinating if you look at it from like just human behavior. Like we didn't have any choice, so we had to change, and
We
we
had
did
to change.
really well as a culture. We adapted pretty well. I mean, there are things that were not so great. Like high school students
Right.
suffered, and there's a
Right.
lot of things that positives and negatives, I guess I could say.
Yeah. A lot of
But
people learn to work from home.
yeah. But physical activity seems to be something that can be a part of our life that can help us navigate change
Oh, I
because we
agree.
live in a world of constant change, whether it's
Right. Yeah.
internal, external, you know.
Yes.
You know how every week I like to say a quote? I can't help
Yes.
myself.
You're good at the quote. I love the quote.
I have two.
Oh, good.
Okay. And I don't want to try to sound like an expert, but I think it's Heraclitus. Heraclitus, he's a philosopher. I don't know how to say it. It's terrible.
You're talking about me doing ECGs today. I'm like, what?
Heraclitus. Somebody help me.
I'm not even gonna try to attempt it.
Try to sound smart.
Heraclitus.
I'll spell it. Okay. Somebody hopefully has a good laugh out there.
Hope you have a good sense of humor.
Heraclitus.
Ah,
I'll have to
okay.
YouTube it and hear it. Anyhow,
I love it.
raw, real, and unplugged.
That's right. Ah, we just made everybody's day. Everybody's laughing now. Everybody's serotonin is lifting.
Okay, but here's the quote. I know that messed up the name, but that's okay. It is in changing that we find purpose, and you cannot step in the same river twice.
Oh, I've
Now
heard
I'm
that
crying
before.
from laughing so hard today.
Yes, I've heard that before about stepping in the same. Yes, because a river is ever flowing.
Yes.
I love it. That's
So let's embrace change because we have no way to not have that in our life. And let's be
Yeah,
curious about
no.
it and excited about it and
Yes.
embrace it. So we'll go through some strategies. Just I wrote down two questions for our listeners to think about. And if you need to pause the episode or, um, come back to it and listen to it multiple times. But think about what's the biggest change you've gone through in your life that you didn't see coming. So,
Ooh.
what's the biggest change you've gone through in your life that you didn't see coming? And then just reflect on that and how you got through it. And then, and learn from that. Learn from those
Yeah.
experiences. And think about, how did it impact your life? And so if you feel like you need to make some changes somehow, that's might be where you learn some things about yourself within that growth mindset.
I think that's a great question. And it made me think real quickly about mine. And I'm just going to briefly share because I'm going to share this probably later in another story. But I would have to say the death of my sister
Yeah.
completely changed my world. I mean, because it was unexpected. And just for the listeners to quickly know, she committed suicide. So not only was that so disruptive, we were supposed to grow old together, we raced together, we did so much stuff together. We were supposed to continue. I'm like, our kids are grown now. We're supposed to, like, this is supposed to be the time of our life. But I will say, it taught me about mental health. It taught me to be aware of how I'm feeling
Mhm.
and overcoming, challenges. I'm sure she was faced with challenges and to talk about it, to reach out
Yeah.
and talk about it. So I won't bring down our good spirit right now with all that.
No,
I just wanted to say,
it's a
but that
deeply
was the
meaning,
first thing that popped in my mind.
it's a deeply meaningful conversation. I
Yeah.
think that our listeners would love to probably learn more about us. It makes us more real.
Yeah.
And we'll think about how to frame those conversations to help other people because we and COVID, we talked about COVID and
Oh,
9/11 and the Texas floods. I mean, these are huge mental health
right.
issues. And, there's a lot of room to grow and having honest conversations about mental health.
I
So
think
I
so.
appreciate you being vulnerable and just sharing that with our listeners because that is a huge
It was a big change. And
change.
and I think we always kind of talk about this in our podcast about mental health to the
Yeah.
point that it made me so I read a health and wellness newsletter. And for August's issue, I'm not as good as the other guy. I don't want do one once a week. I do one once a month, but it's on mental health because
Yes.
I just more and more conversations I've been having with others. Two people, I mean, I've my Facebook friends, and I had two friends this past week talk about or express their feelings on mental health. And I'm like, man, this is a hot topic right now.
It
So
is.
I want to talk about it.
And I think I want to talk about it too here on our
Yeah.
platform and help people. And I think change is a big part of that. People realizing that things that you're going through, we've mentioned it in past episodes, but they're temporary.
Right.
Um, and there's people, and let's go to strategies because
Yeah.
there
Let's talk
are
about
people,
strategy.
support systems, okay? There are people out there who want to help you. And
Yes.
it's just, you know, um, I guess sometimes I say you just need to ask for help, but I think that's a little bit dismissive because sometimes it is hard to ask for help.
Oh, yeah.
So,
But there
maybe
are a
somebody,
lot of hotlines. There are a
yeah.
lot of hotlines for
Yes.
different things. There's the Veterans Hotline, there is the National Mental Health Hotline.
Mhm.
So if you don't want to talk to somebody, maybe you're vulnerable and you're scared to talk about your change process or your mental health with a friend. There's a
Mhm.
lot of the hotlines where they don't even know you. They're not even probably living in the same state as you. But because sometimes just talking, just getting the words out it releases a huge burden.
Yeah, and I think, we always kind of have this like bottom line to these conversations. If we could encourage our listeners, anybody listening today, if you could trust that if you can go from fear to just trusting that the change is going to help you grow. I think that's a really good place to start, and that
Yes.
you can have support systems like friends, mentors,
Yeah.
therapy, spiritual practices. Like, I think that's what it is. It's like a fear or some kind of block, mental block. And it's like, how do you move through that?
Yeah.
And we've said multiple times today, like, it's dynamic. We're not licensed therapists or counselors, so we're not giving professional advice on it. We're just saying from our own personal experiences and everything we know about physical activity and exercise and health and wellness and health promotion. Um, there are positive ways to get through the hard things. Um,
Yes.
and hard can be defined in many different ways. So, and Marilyn, you always say every week, celebrate the small wins. But I think, and you
Yes.
said it today too,
Yeah.
micro
The
steps,
yeah, the mini
small
step, the baby
steps.
steps are what, because that's what's going to take you to get there. And the celebrating the wins is that open acknowledgement that you're making progress in the change. So if
Yes.
you take a step back, because sometimes, right, you hit the goal, you're hitting each step, but you're not really reflecting on what you just accomplished. So if we can reflect for just a minute on this step, it's going to give us the motivation and the momentum to make it to the next step. So I think you have to pause a second and celebrate, so then you feel re-energized and rejuvenated to keep going through this change.
Yes, I
Yeah.
agree. I agree. It's just hard. We got to keep reminding ourselves it's, you
Yeah.
know, change can be messy before it's meaningful.
Yes.
You
Oh my gosh,
know,
perfect. That's a great way
right?
of saying it. Yes.
It can be a little messy
Well,
before
they
it's
say this
not
is uh the something before the storm, the calm before
the
the
calm
storm
before the
comes,
storm,
or
but then
you know,
it's calm again.
yeah, so whatever, yes, it's
And
messy when you're look at when you're done like doing a house, people are building a house and you're looking at like what a mess. But then all of a sudden it's beautiful. Oh, and there's the dog. And there's Kona. Kona
well,
just stuff.
that's a funny conversation about renovations. I'll have that on another episode, but that was not good for that I did not. I'm a structure person. I change very hard. But I think, and like I had mentioned before about when you're going through change and it's different for all of us and we're all in different places in our lives, dealing with different things. But if you
Yeah.
can keep some type of structure in your life,
Yeah.
even if it's just a small thing like go for a walk, a
Right.
30-minute walk every day in the midst of everything going on, whatever it is for you, try to keep some structure in your life as you're going
Yeah.
through it. I think that's a helpful strategy.
Very
My
much.
own
And I
personal
think
experiences.
yes. And with that, there's different ways, like one being mindful of it. So being mindful enough, like, okay, hey, I'm going to be mindful. I'm going to go for a walk. But then journal, if journaling, writing it down so you can reflect back on it later and see. So then you can visually see on the journal. But again, it's just like talking to somebody. Sometimes it's a matter of just writing it down. They say if you're mad at your spouse, write it down and then but don't say anything, and then you come back if and it still makes you mad like an hour or two later. But most of the time when you just write it down, you're like, okay, it's not so bad. So that's just being mindful of your decision. So like that journaling, and then I
Get
always
it
and
outside of your head. That's what it is. When you write it
yeah,
down, get
it
it outside of your head.
get it outside of your head, right?
Very
Because then you can
powerful
process
strategy
it.
and technique. If
Yeah,
you
then
write it down, it's out of your head, you can move on to something else.
yes.
We build mountains in our heads.
I
And
think absolutely way bigger. We make a mountain out of a molehill. Boy, we got a
yeah,
lot of cliches today. And
I
I'm not
know.
messing them up because I usually mess them up.
Well, we could talk forever,
I
but
know.
we,
What
we went
time is it? Oh, okay,
we
it's
went a
time.
little longer today, but I hope it's meaningful for people who are listening. I mean,
Yes.
Marilyn and I really want to use this platform to help people. So we would appreciate if you found this conversation today helpful in any way. Please comment.
Yeah, let
We
us
appreciate
know.
that. And there are people out there to help you if change is really, something, more very serious.
Right.
ask for help. It's okay to, we talked about in one of our episodes about allowing yourself to be a little vulnerable,
Yeah.
it's okay. Ask for help. We want everybody to, live their best lives possible. That's why we are
Yeah,
doing this podcast and using this platform in this way. So
I think so.
any
And
big
just
thank you for
lastly, I just want,
sharing.
oh, sorry.
Thank you for sharing about your sister.
Oh, of course.
I think
It's sad, but it's like, I love talking about her because I help keep her spirit alive. So,
and I think it's going to help other people out there, and that's
yeah,
really what we want to do. So,
because I think talking about getting it out of my head helps me feel
yeah,
better. But,
absolutely.
and I just wanted to share one last thing. I think we have to remember to be grateful. Again, it's that
Love that.
gratitude. And I know we say this a lot too, but be grateful for the change. You don't want to be that stagnant person sitting in the same place for 20, 30 years. So be thankful for the change that you're going through. And I think if we can look at it from a gratitude, perspective, and it'll make the change seem more comfortable.
I love that. I think that's exactly right. We started the conversation today talking about the sparkles. I don't know what's going on with the
Yes.
sparkling,
I'm
but
loving the
now
sparkle.
when you go out there, our listeners, find sparkle, follow
Yes.
it, and
Follow the sparkle.
follow the sparkle.
That's going to be our one. Follow the sparkle.
And we hope it makes you smile. And we thank you for giving us this time and to listen to us today. Um, gosh, I don't remember what we're talking about next week. Well,
Oh, I don't either. I don't even have it in front of me. That's how great we are.
well, stay tuned. We do have it. We do have an outline. We just
Yeah. Yes, I didn't even, I
I,
printed out my other notes, but I didn't even think about that.
I ran
Oh,
this morning. I think I'm just dehydrated. So I think you saw me
yay.
drink some water. I think I
Run. It
need to
was so
hydrate.
hot here running this morning.
Yes, very, very hot. All right. I think
So
that's it
yes,
for
thank you.
today.
We will see you all back here next week.
Okay, thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.